You know that feeling of being next to someone and really wanting her to see you differently? Not just as another guy, you know? That wish that she thinks about you when you're not around, that she smiles without realizing it when she remembers something you said. Yeah, I know exactly what you're feeling. And today I'm here to tell you what actually works, not what people say works, not some generic tips list you find on any blog. What I'm about to share came from real observation, from truly understanding how a woman thinks, how she feels, what she actually carries in her heart. And it starts like this. Most men think complimenting is simple. Open your mouth, say something nice, done. But that's not really how it works. Some compliments fall flat. Some make her smile out of politeness and forget in 2 seconds. And some compliments, and this is where it gets interesting, echo inside her for days. She tells her best friend about it. She thinks about it at 2 a.m. without quite understanding why. The difference between those 3 types isn't the word itself, it's what's behind it. But wait, before we go on, answer me something honestly. When was the last time you complimented a woman in a way that you yourself truly believed what came out of your mouth? Because that's where most men get stuck. We learn to compliment the obvious. You're beautiful. I love your smile. You looked amazing today. Those are nice things to hear, sure. But she already heard that today from the Uber driver, the coworker, the nosy cousin, the neighbor. When you say the obvious, you become just another face in the crowd. And what I want for you is to be the guy who stands out, not by being the loudest in the room, not by what you wear, not by how much money you have, by the way you see her. So let me start with the first way of speaking that changes everything. And before I tell you what it is, I need to ask you something that sounds simple, but isn't. Do you know the difference between looking and observing? Because most people spend their whole lives looking at things and never actually observing anything. Looking is automatic. The eye registers, the brain files it away, life moves on. Observing is different. Observing is when you genuinely slow down inside your own head and start noticing the layers, the detail beneath the detail. And why does that matter here? Because the first compliment that truly sticks with a woman isn't about what you see in her. It's about what you noticed. There's a world of difference between saying, "You're beautiful," and saying, "I noticed that when you get excited about something, your eyes get slightly bigger, and you start talking faster, like the words can't keep up with what you're feeling." The first one anyone can say. The second proves you were present, that she had your real attention. And genuine attention, my friend, is one of the rarest things in this increasingly distracted world. Let me give you a very concrete example, so this doesn't stay just in theory. Imagine you're at dinner with her. Could be a date, could be lunch with mutual friends, could be a family gathering where you two ended up at the same table, and she starts telling a story. Any story. Something funny that happened at work, a situation with her kid, a trip she took years ago. And instead of thinking about what you're going to say when she finishes, you simply listen, really listen. You look at her, and then you start noticing things. The way she tilts her head slightly to one side when she gets to the most important part of the story, the smile that appears before the punchline, before she's even said it. The way she uses her hands, not randomly, but in a specific way that's hers, that nobody else has. Then she finishes. Everyone laughs, everyone comments, and in a quieter moment, just between the two of you, you say, "You tell a story in a very specific way, you know that?" Did you ever notice that you smile before you get to the funny part? Like you're already feeling the humor before you share it with us. She's going to pause. She's going to look at you differently, because nobody had ever noticed that before, not even her. And suddenly you, someone she may still be getting to know, saw something in her that had been there her whole life, just waiting for someone to recognize it. Now think about this. Who has an easier time doing that? The guy in his mid-20s who's anxious, trying to impress, thinking about what he's going to say next? Or the man who has lived, who has learned that silence isn't discomfort, who has understood that the best things in life reveal themselves to those who have the patience to wait? You already have this ability inside you. You just didn't know it was a gift you could offer. Now do something for me. Think of someone you met in your life who made you feel completely seen, not complimented. Seen. You know the difference? How many people have ever done that for you? Probably very few. Maybe one. Maybe none for a long time. And now think, how did you feel about that person? What place did they hold in your memory? Exactly. That's the exact place you're going to hold in her memory when you use the next way of speaking I'm about to share. The vast majority of men, When they decide to compliment a woman, do it with an invisible layer of expectation underneath. It's not calculated. It's not malicious. It's human. You do something kind, and part of you waits for the return. The smile, the "aw, that's so sweet," the look that confirms you got it right. And there's nothing wrong with wanting that. The problem is that this waiting has an energy, and that energy arrives before the words do. You know when you're talking to someone and you feel, without being able to explain exactly why, that this person wants something from you? That behind the kindness there's an agenda? Women are particularly sensitive to this. Not because they're naturally suspicious, but because they've probably been disappointed enough times to develop that radar. So when the compliment arrives with expectation attached, no matter how beautiful the words are, it sounds hollow. It doesn't land. She says thank you out of politeness and moves on. Now the opposite of that, and this is where it gets interesting, is when a compliment arrives and simply stays, without asking for anything in return, without waiting for a reaction, like someone who puts a gift on the table and walks out of the room. That's unsettling in the best possible way, because she doesn't know what to do with something that didn't come with a bill attached. In practice, it looks something like this. You two are leaving somewhere, a restaurant, a party, any outing. Walking side by side, the conversation was good, the vibe is light, and out of nowhere, in passing, without making a ceremony of it, you say, "You're one of the most interesting people I've ever met," and you keep walking. You don't turn your head to see her expression. You don't go quiet waiting for her to process it. You just said it and moved on, the way someone might comment on the weather. What happens inside her in that moment? She's going to want to confirm she heard you right. She's going to want to ask what you meant. She's going to replay that in her head on the way home, in the shower, in that moment right before she falls asleep. And what stays isn't just the compliment itself. It's the feeling that you didn't need anything from it. You were just being honest. And honesty without self-interest is one of the most attractive things that exist. And here's something important I need to tell you. This becomes even more powerful coming from you. Know why? Because a younger man, when he tries to do this, often comes across as rehearsed, like he read it somewhere and is testing it out. But when a man who has lived, who has been through a lot, who no longer needs to prove anything to anyone, says something like this and just keeps moving, that sounds like truth, like someone who spoke because he felt it, not because he calculated it. And truth carries a weight that no technique in the world can fake. Let me ask you something I want you to answer honestly. Have you ever been genuinely impressed by a woman's intelligence and actually told her that? Not as a polite compliment, but for real, with weight behind it? Most men have never done that. And it's not out of bad intention. It's because we were never taught to. We were taught to notice the physical, to comment on appearance, to compliment how a woman looks. And the physical has its place. I'm not saying it doesn't. But when that's all you offer, you're telling her, without meaning to, I only see you on the surface. And an adult woman, a woman who has lived, who has built things, who has made hard decisions, who has made mistakes, and learned and grown, she feels that limitation. She won't complain about it, but she'll hold on to it. The third way of speaking that changes everything is about recognizing her mind. And there are several ways to do this, depending on the moment. Let me give you some real situations so you can picture it. First situation. You two are having a conversation about something complex. Could be about raising kids, a work situation, something happening in the world. And she develops a line of thinking you weren't expecting. She connects 2 points you hadn't connected. She sees an angle that isn't obvious. And instead of moving past it, instead of nodding quickly and changing the subject, you stop. You let 2 seconds of silence sit, and you say, wait, what you just said is a lot deeper than it sounds. Tell me more about that. Not as a line, as someone genuinely interested. Because then you didn't just compliment her intelligence. You asked for more of it. And for any intelligent person, that is the greatest compliment there is. Second situation. She's explaining something she knows well. Her work, a project she runs, an area she's mastered. And you notice she has a gift for making complex things feel accessible without dumbing them down, without losing the depth. So you say, you have something really rare. You make complicated things feel approachable without making them smaller. Most people either overcomplicate or oversimplify. You find the middle. That's not easy to do. That's not flattery. That's a specific observation. And a specific observation proves you are paying attention in a way that goes way beyond protocol. Third situation. She made a hard decision recently. About work, family, herself, and you heard about it. And you say, not necessarily that same day, but in a natural moment, I keep thinking about that decision you made. A lot of people would have taken the easier road. You chose the right one. That says a lot about how you work on the inside. You're not complimenting the outcome. You're complimenting the character behind the choice. And for a woman who has often made difficult decisions and wondered if anyone was watching, that's like opening a window in the dark. Now I need to talk about a specific type, because if you've ever felt stuck not knowing how to reach a quieter woman, a more closed-off one, someone who always seems to be standing just outside her own party, this one's for you. There's a type of woman the whole world tries to liven up. Everyone in the group keeps trying to pull her out of her corner, get her more involved, draw her into the conversation. And she smiles. She appreciates it, but inside she's exhausted. Because she's not quiet, because she lacks substance. She's quiet because she learned somewhere along the way that not everyone is worth the energy. She's selective. She observes before she opens up. And she's been disappointed enough times to know that not every smile is safe. The mistake most men make with this type is trying to force her open, asking question after question, filling the silence with conversation, being way too upbeat in an attempt to loosen her up, and the effect is the exact opposite of what they wanted. She pulls back. She goes further inside herself, because what you're communicating when you do that, without meaning to, is that her silence makes you uncomfortable, that you need her to be different from how she is, for you to feel okay. And then she understands. Another one who doesn't know how to receive me as I am. What works with her is the complete opposite of technique. It's you showing up and simply being comfortable with the way she is. It's you being able to sit in the silence next to her without needing to fill it. And when you do speak, and you don't need to say much, you speak about her presence, not her performance. Let me paint a picture for you. You two are in a group, a lunch, an event, any social setting, and she's not the one at the center. She's on the edge, observing, contributing occasionally with something precise that everyone thinks is great, but the conversation has already moved on. You notice that when she speaks, people stop, but she's not doing it to get attention. She speaks when she has something real to say, and when she doesn't speak, there's a quality to her silence that anchors the room in a way that's hard to explain. Then in a quiet moment between just the two of you, you say to her calmly, "You know you have a very specific presence, right? You don't have to talk much for people to feel you in the room. That's really rare. And you don't wait for an answer. You don't stand there watching her process it. You just say it and let it be. What will happen, maybe not immediately, maybe a minute later, maybe by the end of the night, is that she will find you. Not obviously. But she will find a way to continue the conversation just with you, because you were the only one who didn't try to change her. And for her, that is the safest signal there is. And there's one more layer here I want to give you. A quiet woman, when she decides someone is truly worth it, when she opens up, she goes deep, not halfway, because she doesn't waste openness on just anyone. So if you're the one who saw her before she had to expose herself, you start from a place no man who spent the night trying to entertain her will ever reach. Now, I'm going to talk about one that requires something that seems simple, but that a lot of people have lost somewhere along the way: lightness. The ability to connect with someone without weight, without excessive seriousness, without the tension of someone who is trying too hard. There's something that happens to some men over time, and I say this without judgment, because I understand where it comes from. After a lot of disappointments, after relationships that were heavy, after situations that hurt, we start approaching people with a seriousness that wasn't necessary. Like every interaction is an important negotiation. Like any lightness is a lack of depth. And what comes out is a presence that's too heavy, too careful, that the other person feels, and that, without anyone meaning for it to, pushes her away. Lightness is not superficiality. Lightness is not the absence of depth. Lightness is your ability to be in a moment with another person without carrying the weight of everything you've been through into that moment. It's a skill. And when you have it, when you can be light without being empty, you become someone very special. Because it's rare. The fifth compliment has this quality. It doesn't arrive like a solemn declaration. It arrives like a half smile, like an observation that says, between the lines, I see you, I find you fascinating, and I'm not intimidated by you. And that is irresistible, because most men, when they want to impress a woman, get serious, get careful, get heavy, and she feels that tension, and without realizing it starts to tense up too. In practice, it works like this. You two are talking, and she does something really well, with an ease that surprises you. Maybe a quick, clear decision in a situation that needed clarity. Maybe a sharp response that cut through a knot that seemed impossible. Maybe simply the way she handled a complicated social situation, putting everyone in their place without anyone realizing she was the one who did it. And you, with a genuine smile, not a smirk, a smile of real admiration, say, "You're a little dangerous, you know that? You make something look easy that most people get completely wrong." And you leave it there. You don't explain it. You don't expand on it. You smile and go back to the conversation. The effect of this is almost physical, because you complimented her, and at the same time didn't ask her to process the compliment. You threw it out and turned away. And now she's the one who wants to understand what you meant. She'll naturally find a way to come back to it. She'll think about it on the way home. And while she's doing that, you're occupying her mind in a way she herself won't quite be able to explain. There's one more dimension here that matters specifically for you. A man who has lived carries a natural authority when he speaks. You don't have to force it. She already feels it. So when you use this compliment with lightness, with that little smile, without taking yourself too seriously, the contrast is powerful, because it wasn't what she expected. She expected seriousness, weight, formality, and you gave her lightness with substance. That stays. Now I'm going to tell you my personal favorite out of all 7. Fair warning. This one requires more from you than any of the others, but the return is on a level the others can't touch. I call it the compliment with memory, and it's exactly what it sounds like. It's when you remember something she said, not necessarily today, not necessarily yesterday, but in a previous conversation, and you bring it back, not to show off a good memory, but because it stayed with you, because she, without realizing it, left a mark. Before I give you the example, let me tell you what happens when someone does this to us. Imagine you had a conversation weeks ago where you mentioned something in passing, something small, without much emphasis, a comment in the middle of a bigger story, and then days later the person brings it back up. Not in a weird way, not like they have a notebook of notes on you, but naturally, like someone saying, "That stayed with me. How does that feel?" There's a very specific sensation that happens in that moment, a feeling of, this person really listened to me. I mattered to them outside of that conversation. I left something in them that they carried with them. It's one of the rarest and most beautiful feelings that exist, and that's exactly what you're going to create. In practice, imagine that in some conversation she mentioned, almost in passing, that she can't stand when people make promises they don't keep. It was a small line, in the context of a story about something else. You didn't make a big deal of it at the time, but it stayed. Then a week later, in a natural moment, you say, "You know, I've been thinking about what you said last week, about people who promise and don't follow through. I kept thinking about what that says about you, about the level of integrity you hold yourself to. You don't accept that in others because you don't do it yourself. That's rarer than people think. You're not just complimenting. You're doing 3 things at once, showing you truly listened, showing she occupied your mind after the conversation ended, and connecting what she said to who she is as a person. All 3 together are devastating, in the best way. Another example. She mentioned at some point that she went through a hard stretch a few years back. Didn't go into much detail, but you could tell it was real, that it weighed on her. And weeks later you say, "I keep thinking about you during that period you described." Not with pity, with admiration, because you clearly came out of it more whole than you went in. You can feel that in the way you talk about things now. She will look at you the way very few people have ever been looked at, because you saw her growth, not the suffering, the growth. And whoever sees growth instead of just difficulty is someone who is paying attention on a much deeper level than most. Here's a practical tip I want to give you, because it's simple, and it works. After a good conversation, any good conversation, write down one small thing she said that caught your attention. Just one line, one observation, one thing. Not to use as a tool, but to process what you heard for yourself. Because when you start doing that, you naturally become more present in conversations. And presence generates memory. And memory generates exactly the kind of compliment I'm describing right now. And one last thing about this one. For a man who has been through relationships where he didn't feel heard, and many of you have, this carries extra weight. Because you know in your gut what it feels like to not be remembered. You know what it's like to talk to someone who is physically present but truly absent. And now you have the chance to be the opposite of that, to be the guy who remembers, the guy who was listening when everyone else was just hearing. That is worth more than any line or technique in the world. And we arrive at the 7th. I saved this one for last on purpose, because it's the simplest. And that's exactly why it's the hardest to pull off, and exactly why it's the most powerful of all. Everything I've taught you so far has a structure. There's a moment, an observation, a way of arriving at it. This one has none of that. This is one sentence, short, said in an ordinary moment. No introduction, no context, no drama. You two are talking. Or maybe you're not even talking. Maybe it's one of those comfortable silences where two adults can be together without needing to fill the air. And you look at her and say, calmly, with quiet steadiness, no flourishes at all. You're a really good person. Just that. And you don't explain it. You don't finish the thought. You don't wait for her to respond. You say it and let it sit. Now let me tell you what happens inside her. Not in the moment. In the moment she might just smile, maybe not even know what to say. But afterward, the next day, doing something completely mundane, washing dishes, stuck in traffic, making her morning coffee, those words come back. You're a really good person. And a very specific process begins. She starts asking herself, am I? Does he really see me that way? Does that come through in me in some way I don't even notice? What did he see that made me seem like that to him? And then something happens that goes beyond the compliment. She begins to want to confirm, for you and for herself, that you're right. People tend to become what the people they admire see in them. When someone you respect sees you in a very positive light, you begin, almost involuntarily, to act in ways that confirm that vision. You didn't just give a compliment. You planted a seed in how she sees herself when she's thinking about you. And there's one more layer here that matters. Every compliment most people receive in their lives talks about what a person looks like, what they've done, what they've accomplished. This one talks about what she is, at the core, at the essence, the part that doesn't change with the outfit, the job title, or the mood of the day. And when someone touches that part of you with simplicity, and without wanting anything in return, something moves inside you. It's hard to put into words, but anyone who has ever received that knows exactly what I'm talking about. Now, the warning I have to give you, and this is non-negotiable. This compliment only works if it's true. If you don't think she's a good person, don't say it. If you don't believe what's about to come out of your mouth, don't say it. Because inauthenticity has its own texture. An adult woman feels it immediately, and the effect becomes the exact opposite. She closes off, she grows suspicious. She files you away as another one who used pretty words to get somewhere. What makes this compliment powerful is not the technique. It's the truth inside it. The technique without the truth is worth nothing. So we've reached the end of all 7. But before you close this video, I need you to stay with me for one more moment, because there's something I saved for last that is more important than anything else I said today. None of what I taught you today is a script. It's not a series of lines you're going to memorize and replay word for word, hoping for a guaranteed result. What I gave you is a way of thinking about how you relate to another person. A way that starts from a very simple principle that the world seems to have forgotten. The person next to you deserves to be truly seen, with real attention, with genuine curiosity, with the willingness to be present, not just physically, but in the full meaning of the word. And here I want to say something specifically to you, the one watching this video who has already lived a good piece of life. You have advantages that no technique in the world can substitute, and that a younger man will take a long time to build. You have history. You have calm. You've been through enough to know that anxiety doesn't solve anything, that rushing ruins good things, that silence doesn't always need to be filled. You've lost people who mattered, and you know the weight of that. You've rebuilt things that seemed impossible to rebuild. You've gone through seasons that taught you things that can't be learned without living them. And all of that shows up when you speak. It shows up in the time you give to your words, in the way you listen, in the steadiness of someone who doesn't need to prove anything because he's already proven it to himself. That is irresistible in a way that no 25-year-old catalog, no matter how good-looking, can replicate. So what I'm asking of you is this. Use what I taught you today not as a tool, but as a reminder that being present is a gift, that truly listening is rare, that naming what you see in someone is a form of care, in the fullest sense of the word, that words said with truth carry a weight that rehearsed words will never have. You don't need to be perfect. You don't need to have everything figured out. You don't need to be the youngest, the best looking, or the richest one in the room. You just need to be present. Completely, genuinely present. And presence, my friend, is the most beautiful compliment there is. If you made it to the end of this and felt something click, if something inside you said, yeah, that makes sense, do me a favor. Share this video with that friend of yours who needs to hear it. You know who it is. We always do. And tell me in the comments, which of the 7 are you going to try first? Or even better, was there someone specific you were thinking about the whole time I was talking? Tell me. I genuinely want to know.